I'm going to have all these able to SR. When we come back out, airplanes go right back into our task force here. Our CVL goes in here. Everything's bunching up into one. The airplane, get our airplane out here. We want to start fighting here. That's probably where I'd put it. I would SR. I need to defend Manila. I would like to hold this down here. These are going to stay here. I want the tanks off back in China. So I have all those ships, whatever I got here, still on the task force. But I forgot. I'm going to have to SR these tanks into the capital because I just took my tanks out. I forgot I don't have any ships to SR right now. The only thing I can SR is this plane. So that's it. We go to the Americans' turn. Americans, summer. Well, again, they got nothing. These will turn back over because they will arrive in Australia next turn. Let's go to builds. We can build 2 naval air. We get 3 fleets we can build. We get 3 CVEs. We get 5 Army air factors plus the ones that died, which are 4. We get a Marine. Plus, I lost a Marine at Wake. Where is he? And we get 3 more infantry. Americans buy. Their base goes from 185 to 205. Let's see what that is. Well, that's definitely 10 plus 1, so that's 11. 11 SRs. The initial deployments, half of that round up is 6. So now he gets 6 initial deployments. What would that bring? I think that's what'll do it. It's the summer of 42. Americans brought in 15 fleets, 3 aircraft carriers, and another 5 3-plane. All that's going to go on Pearl. Japanese are down to 2 air here and his strike force, which has been dwindling. He was only able to put 3 aircraft in here that he had bought, and he did buy a CV, so he added 5 more airplanes here. But would he airstrike that again? Remains to be seen. We would just keep going like that. I think by the end of 42, the pressure of the Japanese strike in Pearl Harbor will be over. I think I'll have Guadalcanal. We'll be struggling for Port Moresby. And I would be fortifying my new positions. And the Americans would probably not start their comeback until 43. We just took 4 turns out of the Americans by keeping up a strike on Pearl Harbor. So I know I went by this pretty quick because, you know, I didn't want to take another 2 weeks to put this video up. So I was just doing it quick. I have other things I've got to do, so I was running out of time here. So sorry for going real fast, but you get the idea. The Japanese keep striking. 2 strikes in the winter of 41 when you strike Pearl. You come back in the spring, you come back in the summer. And now we would decide, are they coming back in the fall to hit this? You might. I mean, I have, you know, still 6 carriers here and light carriers, and we'd go for another carrier battle. I'll tell you what, we'll go for 1 more airstrike and see what happens. They bring a patrol out. We didn't have ships again to get more planes to... The Japanese are going to be close to out of money here in the fall because they've taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 offensive options and buying back their, you know, everything they can. So it would be fall and we would try a strike again. Let's see what the American magic would be for this turn. See what we got now. Looks better. 2 there. Alright, finally hit a 3. Alright, 3 magic now for once. Something a little different with Americans. As he's moving out, I'm going to let him get to his hex that he designated for his patrol, which is 3 from Pearl. Now, I say I'm going to intercept. But I'm not going, but I can't yet because I let him get to his patrol hex. Now he gets to roll for surprise first. So surprise is, let's see, -1 for radar, -1 for eligible air units on an air base, which I do have the land-based air there. Okay, so if I provide air cover for this force, they can't search. And I'm definitely providing air cover. So I'm going to leave 1 plane behind. This one's staying behind to search, 4 providing air cover. So remember, during the movement phase, as I'm moving the patrol out, I can now counter air. Now, the Americans have more land-based aircraft there and naval aircraft. I would have to counter air the entire thing. And I'm greatly outnumbered. I would probably lose the battle, most likely. And then the Americans would still get to fly its air to be used in the naval combat. So the best thing for the Japanese to do is to not counter air, but try to provide some kind of air cover, defensive air cover, for their task force. But the problem we're running into now is that the task force battle is going to take place 4 hexes away from where my air are based, so they can't reach the battle hex. So let's see what we got. The question is, for the Japanese, do you just involve the air? Yeah, it ain't worth it. I mean, it's just not worth it. Let's see what happens in the battle. So this is providing air cover, defensive air cover for this. And the interception's automatic within 3. Let's set up our forces on our table. Only thing I'm apprehensive about with this attack we're going to do in the fall is that as the Americans, I'm letting the Japanese get to the patrol hex. Remember, I was stopping him before then. But if I let him reach the patrol hex, there's a chance he can airstrike this base with all my ships there and stuff before I intercept. That's the only thing I don't like. But it is the fall of 42. I'm still hemmed in at Pearl Harbor. I'm going to have to take a chance, so we're going to do it. So we set up. So we don't know, we haven't rolled for interception success, even though it is going to be automatic. 3 hexes away, automatic interception. But you're not supposed to roll for it. Assign your air to the airstrikes. This is the same dilemma Nagumo found himself at the Battle of Midway. Now at this point, the Japanese have to allocate their aircraft once they reach their patrol destination. And the dilemma here is, if the Americans come out to intercept, the Japanese won't have aircraft to attack their naval units. The chances of the Japanese surprising the naval base and getting to airstrike the naval base before the interception is not going to be real high. But I think in this case, if we can catch the American carriers in port, then we should get ready to strike it. If we do not strike the port, then we can conduct no further airstrikes against it if we don't do any damage to it. And then we're just sitting there, which is okay, because we'll just watch that American fleet while we conduct any of our invasions, at Guadalcanal. Now, for this scenario that's happening right now, as the Japanese player, we believe that the Americans are going to come out and intercept us with everything they have. So we're actually not going to strike the base. And if we don't strike it and the Americans don't come out, then we'll just watch the Americans where they go and try to intercept them. Either way, we're going to bottle up the Japanese. We're going to bottle up the Americans in Pearl Harbor. So we're going to allocate our air to naval airstrikes and get ready for a naval battle. And like I said, if the Americans don't come out, well, pretty much we have achieved our goal once again by keeping the Americans bottled up in Pearl. So that's the route we're going to take. So at this point, once the patrol reaches its hex, the Americans do say they are going to intercept at the patrol hex. At this point, the Japanese, they don't roll for the interception die roll yet of the Japanese fleet. The Japanese get to see if they surprise the base and strike first. So with this, you have to follow some modifiers. And you know, it's kind of late now, but I don't know if I ever mentioned. The modifiers you use is under 27.581, the sequence of air attacks. And with this, you go to 27.584, carrier attacks against enemy bases. And this is the procedure you follow. So we get the -1 for each enemy air base containing an eligible air factor within range of the hex. So we have 2 ports here, right, sitting in Hawaii. And if I have an air factor on each one of those, they can help minus off the Japanese die roll. Now here's the deal. With my land-based air or the carriers here, I can use them to search for the Japanese. And if I do use them to search for the Japanese, I can still use them to run cap over the base only. I can't use them to attack in a naval combat if the Americans' interception succeeds. So what do I want to do? Do I want to put them all on the attack, or do I want to keep some back for a search? And I think in this instance, I'm going to take one land-based Army air factor and keep it over the base, and I'm going to say this is going to be used for search. So I'm just going to use one. I could use 2 if I want, because I have 2 ports here, but I'm going to go with 1. So that's -1 off the Japanese die roll. And then any magic points we wish to allocate will -1. So I'm going to allocate 1 magic point. Now that's a -2. And then the other modifier we get is -1 for radar. So we have a -3 now. And I'm just debating if I should put a second air factor. That'd be a -4, because remember, all he has to roll is a 1. And he gets to airstrike the base first. Now, I don't know that the Japanese player didn't put any of his planes on airstrike. See, I believe he's out here to airstrike. Make sure he doesn't get a good surprise level. So I tell you what, I'm going to take another land-based air factor. That's 2 now. I'll have 1 on each port, so that's -2. So now I have 2, 3, 4. I have a -4 off this Japanese die roll. And he gets a 1. So that is definitely in the negative. He does not surprise the base. The Americans do come out and intercept. Now, unbeknown to the American player, he didn't realize the Japanese wasn't interested in striking the base, that he put all his air on naval units. But if you were in a game, this is how I would play either side. I mean, the Americans want to attack out at sea so he can sink carriers and not get caught in the port. And the Japanese are just playing, strategy and using tactics to cover himself. But I decided to do 3 Japanese combat groups and kind of use this group as a decoy. I'm hoping I can get the second combat group to attack. The Americans have seen me put all my stuff in the first combat group twice now, so I'm trying to throw him off a little bit, and maybe if his search isn't very good, he's going to go after combat group 1, and I won't have anything in it. The American task force comes out. So, concerning the American land-based Army aircraft at Pearl Harbor, the Japanese chose not to counter-air them because they were a smaller force, and if they wanted to keep the air there for later use, the Americans decide what they want to do with their Army aircraft as our naval force comes out to intercept the Japanese. Now the first one I chose to do, you can search with these planes. I took 2 factors and I used on the search. Now once these 2 planes use on the search, they're the only things they can do now is fly cap over their base and help protect it in case the base is attacked. Or you can use them, even though they searched, you can use them to attack naval units at the end of the current air combat round. So that's the only thing I can do with those two. So as of right now, I got two of them searching. Now the second thing I can do is I can just fly them out and use the entire force to attack the naval units at the end of the current naval combat sequence. But I choose not to do that, just because, only if I have to, because remember, fighting over water, the land-based air are not as good. And then the third thing is I can use them to provide defensive air cover for our fleets moving to the interception hex. What's cool about that, what I like to do, is as they're flying defensive air cover, if they get in a naval combat, which we're gonna, those planes that are providing defensive air cover can now provide cap for any single combat group that you put them in, just that combat group during the naval combat. And that's what I like to use them as. And that's why I'm going to put all four of these protecting my carriers on cap. Even though when the Japanese do attack that group, we're fighting over water and it does have a disadvantage to the Army air factors, I still like doing it because it frees up my naval aircraft to go all out and attack the Japanese carriers, and I'm still providing cap with these Army air factors. I hope that I explained that well. And we have an automatic interception. Now we have naval combat. And these four planes will provide cap over that combat group because it's providing air cover during the interception. And so now we move into naval combat sequence. The Americans are going to apply a magic to decrease the Japanese search, and they will get to add 1, 2, 3 to their roll, but they're going to have to subtract 1 because of magic. And they get a 1. They add 2 to it, becomes a 3. What is their search? Poor weather, 2 enemy combat groups remain hidden, and combat group 1 may attack. So they didn't get this, and both of these remain hidden, so the Japanese get nothing. The Americans, and they add 2 for combat groups, and that's another reason why I wanted to wait till the Japanese got within the 3 hex. So one of the reasons I chose to intercept the Japanese at only 3 hexes out is so I can get my land-based Army air factors involved in the battle. They can help by searching now that they can reach the interception hex. They can provide cap over the base, which they always could, and they can actually attack the Japanese naval units in the interception hex at the end of the current combat round. They can't attack during the naval combat. Or they can provide defensive air cover for my task force moving to intercept the Japanese, and then they can provide cap during the naval combat. They can't attack the ships, only provide cap if they're doing defensive air cover. So that's why I waited for them to get to 3 hexes on this one now, as opposed to intercepting them farther out. So let's continue with the search die roll. 4 for the air. 2 and 4 is 6. All enemy combat groups are located. Combat groups 1 and 2 may attack. So the surprise level is a 3 for the Americans. Anti-aircraft defense is less effective. The defender incurs a minus die roll modifier on his air defense die rolls, and he gets no +1 for his air combat. Would really love to knock one of his search modifiers down. This one has 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This one has 11. I can knock this one down. Well, let's start sinking carriers. So he has 3 cap. Now remember, his caps go caught off guard. He doesn't get the +1 for cap, but he still will get a +1 for elite. He has 3, and he's going to try to stop 3. So he makes it even up, but he gets a +1 for elite. And he does it. He just killed all 3 of those, and he lost half of that, which is 1. To the air defense, we have 6, 7, well 6, and that misses. Actually has the -1, so it's really a 5. So 6 go on. We're going to pick 2 of the small carriers right here. So each carrier gets a air defense 6. And that misses. And then we'll go ahead and attack. 3 air attack on that. And a 7. For 3 is a 1, 2. And that sinks a carrier. The other one will get an air defense of 1. And he has an 8, which goes down to a 7. And that aborts 1 plane. So only 2 are attacking that carrier. And he gets a 4. And we put 1 damage on it. So this carrier's damaged. So the planes fly back. And this carrier is damaged. It goes back to truck. I can use subs to go after it, but I can't. I used all my subs. So that's it. So we go to another round of naval battles. And we can rearrange the composition. I mean, not the composition, but we can rearrange the order of our combat groups. But I think I still like this. And the Americans are still good with theirs. So the search modifiers, 3 to the Japanese. And he gets a 6. All enemy combat groups are located and may attack with 1 and 2. But this one can't attack. He knows where that one is. Now let's roll for the Americans. The Americans have 1, 2, 3. And they get a 5. 1 enemy combat group remains hidden. 1 and 2 may attack. So I can attack with this. He gets to keep one of these hidden. He'll keep this one hidden. So the Americans say we're going to attack this one. So they come in with 3. And the surprise level is only 1, and that's not going to matter here. In the Japanese favor, which is actually reduced to 0. So they're not getting anything. So we have to fight the cap. So the Japanese plane right here will take on 1. And it's not elite, so it's even up battle. Oh, and they both die. So 1 Japanese, 1 American. 5 will come in. Okay, so it looks like I forgot to do the air defense because I've already recorded all this and I'm looking over it, making sure things are right. So I forgot to do the air defense roll, so we'll just skip it and we'll move on to the aircraft carrier defense rolls. And again, we're going to split them up and go against the carriers here. And the carrier gets a roll. 8. One more aborts out of this one. So 2 will attack that carrier. And he gets a 10. And a 1-3 sinks that carrier. So 1 had aborted, so only 2 hit it. So now 3 will hit the other one. He gets an air defense roll, which is 8 again, so he aborts another one. And he gets an 8. And it's a 1-2, because he only has 2 factors really. They're not really 3, there's really 2. And the 1-2 sinks another carrier. And that goes back. So this one, he sends all these planes against the Americans. and he has to fight the American cap. And the Americans say, remember water, so it has to, this land base has to stay at a 4. So he will go with, he'll attack 2 planes. The Japanese can decide what 2. And they're going to say, let's take on 2 elite. That way the Japanese will get a +1. The Americans are 2 over, so they get a +2. So it's a +1 to the Americans. And the Americans have cap. That's a +2 to the Americans. And it becomes a 4. So 2 Japanese are shot down. And 1. Well, now you go to the, after the battle, you turn this into air squadrons. So there's 12 there, and you lost 1. So since you only lose 1, nothing happens. It goes back to a 4. Now remember, I explained earlier that this really shouldn't be a 4-3 Army factor. It should only be a 3-3, but we didn't catch the mistake on time, so I'm using the 4. So now you turn it into air squadrons. Remember, each Army air factor represents 3 squadrons, so 4 times 3 is 12 air squadrons. Now you take out losses. Well, they only lost 1. So when you revert that back to Army air factors, if you have over half of that Army air factor remaining, which, remember, 3 Army air factors revert back to 1 Army air factor, but you only have 2 Army air factors left here, it automatically rounds up and becomes a full air factor. If you only had 1 air squadron left, then it would eliminate 1 Army air factor if he would have lost at least 2 air squadrons. But he did not. He only lost 1. Therefore, it reverts, rounds up, and the Army air stays and does not lose something. Now these will go in and attack. But first, let's do the air defense. The air defense, they have 2 to the air defense roll. We have 6, and 1 plane gets shot down. Take a regular off, and they're going to put 4 on this carrier, and they're going to put, so now this is what I got. That's going to be real risky. I think I better change it. Better go 5 and 3. Or you know what? Let's go 4 and 4. We're going to leave 1 carrier alone. So 4 is going after that carrier. Let's roll for its defense. Wow, 12. 1 and 1. 1 is aborted. 1's dead. 1 comes back. So 2 are attacking. And they're elite, so add 1. 5 becomes a 6. And it's 1 and 1. So he damaged this carrier. Next one. Air defense. 7. And we abort 1. Now 3 will attack that carrier. We'll get a 7. It's a 1-2. So that damaged that carrier. And they go back. So 2 U.S. carriers are damaged. They're going to have to return to port. As they go back, the Japanese will bring out 7 subs and hit 1. The Americans, for their loss, lose 2 planes that can't land on the carrier. So the air defense roll of the carrier is 1, and he rolls a 7. And we abort a sub, and then we have 7 subs attacking the carrier. It goes into a fleet combat, and he rolls a 10. And it's a 2-3, sinks the American carrier. Now all his subs are used. All the Japanese subs are done. This one goes back to port. To rearrange combat groups, or these go into another one because it can't form its own now. So we're back to this. And this is going to be our next airstrike. We decide if there's any withdrawals first though. I think the Americans are going to withdraw. You know, we lost 2 carriers. And we're going to get better defense in the port right now. As far as modifiers go, I have 3, 6, 9. I still have 2. And you'll know he has 2 because he tells you how many combat groups. Or his total modifiers. So, and then I do have the search plane. So I have a better search still. Go back in port. I get all these land-based air to turn into naval aircraft. No. Let's do it. Let's search. Japanese get a 1. They add 2 to it, it becomes a 3. Just what we were hoping for. 2 enemy combat groups remain hidden. So he does not see the Americans. This is our 3rd round, by the way. And now the Americans. They get to add 1, 2, 3. 4 and 3 is a 7. Number of fast carriers in enemy combat group 1 is revealed, and they all may attack. So we have this one. We can attack. It's a 7 to a 3. That's a surprise level of a 4. And the attacker receives +1 die roll modifiers on his air attacks. That's nice. Alright, let's take the air results. What I'm thinking about. So we have 3 coming in on this. He doesn't get a +1 for cap, but he is there. He's going to go after 1 American plane. And the American plane, so he outnumbers you by 1 and he's elite. So add 2 to the red dice. And he destroys the 1 American plane. The Japanese lose none. I go in for the air defense. He has to -1 off his air defense roll. 7 becomes a 6. And I believe he has a 2. There's 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes. One is destroyed. One gets through. We're attacking a CVL-2. And we have a 6. And the carrier misses. So 2 will strike that carrier. Oh, man. I get to add 1 to it too. So we sunk that carrier. So the Japanese are back down to their 4 carriers. And they didn't find anything. Now we get into naval combat. So now when fleet combat starts, there's no more concealment for this entire force. Everything's in the open and you don't have to search for it. You already know where it is. Let's see if we're losing any aircraft here. Because you can land there. Yeah, you don't have to lose any. You got plenty of fleet carriers that handle it. But you know where it is. These get into fleet combat. Let's do the fleet combat. I have 7 for the Japanese. That's a roll of a 5 for fleet combat. 1 and 1. So Americans are going to lose 1 and 1. Now the Americans, and they get a 7. And it's 1 and 2. So Japanese lose 1, Americans lose 1, and then 1 is aborted, goes back to Pearl, and 2 come out to play. They abort 2. So that's it for that fleet combat. And now we go back to another round unless anybody wants to withdraw. And the Americans are going to withdraw now. So they go back All these are back. FYI, with there's no more concealment, no more combat groups with these forces from the first combat group that had to get in a fleet combat. They're all seen now because the surface ships came together and they see each other. Now we would still go through a search and surprise followed up by fleet combat. And once the fleets are gone, then you start taking losses from the carriers. So the Americans withdrew and they sunk 4 light Japanese carriers. So the damage is really, by the Japanese, is really doing pretty good. 1 heavy, 4 light. The Americans have lost 3 heavies. Now the Japanese have a decision to make. Do they strike the port? And you have land-based air there now. You don't have a lot of planes left. I don't know. I might call it a day right here, I think, and say we did it. We could get that last carrier. I actually ran through the airstrike and I didn't get the carrier and I lost more planes, so I just returned home. But it wasn't a bad deal. But what I might have done now was use that land-based Japanese aircraft there instead of trying to save it. Army air factors that the Japanese still have on Hilo. That, during the combat phase, after all missions are announced, land-based aircraft can now come out and attack naval units in port. So I can even use them up to attack whatever ships are left and still destroy some. So the Japanese really did a number. They were able to attack Pearl Harbor for 4 turns, 1 in winter of 41, and then remember spring, summer, and fall of 42. Really did a number on the Americans. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned something. In about 6 months or so, I will revisit this game and do a play-by-play using this very strategy and see how the Americans can come back from this. The patrol's done, they go home. It's the American fall turn and they finally survived there with 5 land air, those ships, 1 carrier. And another carrier comes in on the Americans' turn, some more aircraft, some more ships, and some more naval air. So all that's there now. The Japanese are down to minimum and they're done. No more airstrike in Pearl Harbor. So this is fall. So it will be the Americans' winter turn when they will start doing something to see how it goes and see how quickly. Because remember, the Japanese are working on this stuff out here. I would say they would get Guadalcanal and they would start fortifying Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Kwajalein, Wake, Midway. I think I would let Johnston go. And then start building up back here on my money islands. But we just took a whole year off the Americans striking. Now, did the Japanese get hurt bad? I don't know. In their builds, remember, they can build 3 aircraft. What do they have coming in? Nothing. They got nothing coming in the fall. So they would build 3 aircraft. So 3 aircraft would be back. We'd be able to SR them to this ship. There's 3 here. And 2 here. So we're short for the 4 carriers there. No use buying those carriers. We're going to get 1. Well, maybe buying 1. I still have 1 here. That was returned. And that's it. So I'm hurting definitely on the naval air. I have more carriers than I have naval air. So yes, I'm definitely done. I would go ahead and just buy, let's buy another CV3 carrier. And he would return here. The Japanese will start winter, so already next turn he's going to get 1 carrier back. I'm going to have more carriers than planes, but let's see what the Japanese would get. They got to go all the way to spring before they get any more naval aircraft. The Americans, they just go to winter. They're going to get another ship. 3 CVLs. Wow. 10 naval aircraft, 5 more Army aircraft, more Marines. So yeah, the Americans are coming back strong. So that's our third strategy for the Japanese. You just keep striking Pearl, and I tried to work it out to show you how strikes would go, because they can get confusing and I was forgetting a lot. Sorry about that.